Hello, everyone. I'll wait a second for a few people to tune in. It doesn't look like spring here in Helena, so if you are tuning in and have spring weather, let me know because we've had snow here for the last 2 days. Well, it looks like we've got a few people on, so I'll just get started. And the way I wanted to start this week was an update on a few bills that we talked about last week that received executive action this week. And the first one was House Bill 478. This was the bill that would essentially allow bison to be transported across the state to a tribal entity regardless of whether or not they have been tested brucellosis free. So this is a really bad bill that we opposed last week in the House Agriculture Committee. And I just wanted to let everyone know that that bill was tabled in committee as of this week. So we can rest assured that that bill is not going anywhere, and we will maintain our brucellosis-free status here in Montana. Hi, Ricky. Oh, speaking of which, my counterpart is at ACE training today, so you guys are stuck with just me. But another bill that had executive action this week was House Bill 31. This was the fire assessment fee bill that I spoke with you about last week, and it essentially placed property taxes on every landowner's parcel across the state, and it had a base fee per parcel. You could have another fee if you had timber, and then another fee if you had a dwelling on that parcel. So essentially, landowners across the state could be having 3 additional property taxes placed on their land to fund fire preparedness across the state, not fire suppression, just equipment and training and things like that. So we opposed that bill. And so did everyone else. There wasn't one proponent. So it might not come at a huge surprise that that bill was tabled in committee, but I wanted to give you guys an update on that as well. We were happy to see that bill die in that committee. Another one that we were happy to see get tabled was House Bill 402. This bill also would increase property taxes for certain areas in the state. It allowed counties to implement a local property tax to fund an invertebrate management program, so aquatic invasive species. Different areas across the state have the ability to assess a tax on themselves in order to do vertebrate management. So if a county wanted to implement, say, a prairie dog management plan, they would be able to do that. And this bill essentially just added aquatic invasive species into that program, which we were not supportive of. We should not be taxing our private landowners across the state for aquatic invasive species. So we were happy to see that bill die in committee. There was a lot of discussion about amending that bill, and we put out those flames, and we're happy to see that not move any further in the process. So 3 bad bills tabled in their respective committees this week, and we were happy to see that. Oh, I'm glad you're having a good morning in Prairie County, Shelley. It does not look that great here. It's pretty wet and it's still snowing, and it doesn't look like it's gonna let up. But a few new bills this week, and this is the last week that any transmittal bills can be heard, and they have to be through the process by Monday, April 1. And that means that all of these bills that have just been waiting until the last minute have been spurring up out of nowhere. I mean, we've been having a few bills that had less than 12 hours notice for a hearing. You find out the day you get into the Capitol. So it's been a very, very busy week here in Helena. One of those bills that popped up out of nowhere was House Bill 740. And this would allow counties to create a local option sales tax. This discussion has already been had here at the session a couple times. So thankfully the committee was well versed on why there are opponents to this, this bill. And on our perspective, essentially, we have a lot of members that travel to these urban hubs to do the vast majority of their shopping. So this bill, it creates a local option sales tax where 5% of that county to vote to have a local option sales tax. And then the funds collected from that go toward property tax relief in that county. So we saw that very much as private landowners across the state would be going to, say, Billings to do their shopping, or Bozeman, and essentially subsidizing the local local residents in that area's property taxes. We are super happy to have the conversation about property tax relief, but this bill was not, it was not the solution, and it was heard on yesterday morning, very little notice. And they did have to take executive action on it that day, and it did die in committee. So we were happy to see that. something that we are encouraged by is, they continue to have this conversation of how can we broaden our tax base and how can we quit relying so much on property taxes. And we vocalize the fact that we are happy to be a part of that discussion and continue moving this conversation forward. So another bill that was new this week was House Bill 674. This was introduced by Representative Carrie White, and it would allocate a larger portion of the dollars collected from the gas tax in the state of Montana toward maintenance of off-highway vehicle and snowmobile trails. So that is certainly an increasing tourist industry here in the state of Montana. A lot more people are coming into the state to do those things. However, we have pretty strict policy that gas tax dollars should be used strictly for roads. And our members feel strongly about that because they see the need for infrastructure across the state in their local communities. So we oppose that bill. It did die in committee. So the nice thing is we get an instant result with a lot of these bills when they're pushed through the process last minute. So they typically have been having to take executive action the day of or 2 days later because they have to get past the finish line by Monday. So that one died in committee. House Bill 707 was another tax bill that popped up pretty last minute. And this bill would create restrictions to who can utilize the capital gains tax credit. So that tax credit is essentially applied towards your income taxes due at the end of the year. So it creates a restriction for people who have an annual gross income of $1 million or less. So we oppose this because a lot of our members do realize an annual gross income of $1 million and also have capital gains at the end of the year. However, their net income very rarely realizes $1 million. So the conversation that was had was essentially this is a tax credit for wealthy and we're valuing our wealth over labor here in the state of Montana, and agriculture does not fit that mold. And so we vocalized that in that committee, and it was also tabled. So we were happy to see that because our members do utilize that capital gains tax credit. Another new bill this week was Senate Bill 341. That was actually just heard in Senate Finance and Claims for its second hearing this week. It was heard in Senate Natural Resources prior to that. And this bill seeks to address the public lands, private lands access conflict that occurs here in the state of Montana. Every year we have discussion about corner crossing bills and essentially ways to navigate around the system to access public lands. And we haven't really came up to a solution, so we were excited to see Senate Bill 341 come through the works. It's been a bill that we have been collaborating with other organizations on for essentially the entire session. And what it does is it takes $1 million per biennium from the special revenue account, and it allows Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to negotiate public land access agreements with private landowners. So this is very much one of those incentivize with a carrot and not the stick type of solutions, and we supported that. It allows landowners to negotiate the terms of the public access on their land, whether it be a trail or if they would be putting in a parking lot or season of public access, restricting when people can come in. There's a lot of negotiation that happens in this bill, which was a critical component to our support of it. And it allows $15,000 per access agreement. So they are amending it to allow for each landowner to have multiple agreements, because there are landowners that have multiple plots of land that could be utilized to access landlocked public lands. So this program is specifically for private landowners who own land that landlocks private land. So that bill came out of Senate Natural Resources with flying colors. There were no opponents to the bill. And then it was heard in Senate Finance and Claims this morning for a very quick hearing just to talk about the fiscal note. So that's moving through the process, and it might even be heard on the Senate floor today, because these bills, they need to start moving through the process. They need second, third reading before Monday. So I'll take a second. Any questions? It looks like you guys are having beautiful weather, a bit of snow and rain, but 37 degrees, which is good. But feel free to jump on. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, you can ask questions afterwards too. We check in pretty regularly. Another new one this week was SJ20. This was Senator Wellborn's resolution that requested those wilderness study areas that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about no longer be designated as wilderness study areas. A little background on that: those wilderness study areas have been in existence for about 35 years, where they're being studied as to whether they should be designated as wilderness. And the intent when those were put in as WSAs was for there to be a 5-year period of time where those plots of land are studied, and then they're either designated wilderness or not. And there's quite a few of them here in the state of Montana. So this resolution would essentially request that those designations be made and we move forward with those WSA plots. Hi, Jess. I'm not sure I have any more bills that have came up this week. It has been a really, really busy week as people are just trying to get everything through the process, but it's looking like next week will slow down because bills are moving quickly. I think these guys talk every year about wanting to get out of here early, but they might actually do it this year, knock on wood. But HJ 28, yeah. So HJ 28 was the resolution that requests the denial of the American Prairie Reserve's grazing proposal. That resolution was heard in Senate Agriculture last week, and they have not taken executive action on it as of yet. And I believe the reason for them not doing that is because it's already been through the process. It's made its transmittal deadline. So those bills that have already gotten through their House are essentially put on the back burner to get some of these new bills through the process as fast as possible. So it hasn't had executive action yet. It's not a bad sign. We supported that. And I presume that next week they will take executive action, but this week was one of those weeks where they just had to get all of those new bills that haven't gone through the process through. So they made transmittal deadline on Monday. So good question. I know there's a lot of members that have been watching that one as well. But if I don't have any more questions, I might tune off. Alrighty, thanks guys. As always, you can leave questions and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Have a great weekend. Bye.